Every single Forever 21 store in the United States is gone. The fashion empire that a Korean immigrant couple built from $11,000 in savings reached a value of $4.4 billion, and it closed its last door in May of 2025. To understand how a company falls that far, you have to go back to 1981. Do Chang and Jin Sook Chang landed in Los Angeles carrying almost no money, no college education, and limited English. 3 decades later, they had built Forever 21 into one of the most recognized fast fashion brands on earth, with over 800 stores across 57 countries, a combined family fortune that peaked at $5.9 billion, according to Forbes, and revenue that dwarfed many publicly traded fashion companies. And then, it all fell apart. Not from a recession, not from a hostile takeover, but because the same family that built the empire refused to let anyone else help run it, even as forces that created competitors like Shein and Temu exploited an $800 trade loophole that killed American retail. Every single Forever 21 store in the United States closed permanently by May of 2025. Going from $11,000 to nearly $6 billion and then losing everything takes a specific kind of story, and that is what we are breaking down today. Born on March 20, 1954, in Myeongdong, Seoul, South Korea, Do Chang never attended university. When he and Jin Sook settled in the Highland Park neighborhood of Los Angeles in 1981, survival meant working 3 jobs at once: a gas station, a janitorial gig, and a coffee shop, all adding up to roughly 19-hour days. Jin Sook picked up work as a hairdresser. That gas station turned out to be the place where everything clicked. As Do later told the Los Angeles Times, he noticed the people who drove the nicest cars were all in the garment business. That one observation rewired his entire future. Over the next 3 years, the couple scraped together $11,000, roughly $33,000 in today's money, and on April 16, 1984, they opened a tiny storefront called Fashion 21 at 5637 North Figueroa Street in Highland Park. 900 square feet, both founders working the floor themselves, buying wholesale closeout merchandise from manufacturers at steep discounts and selling affordable Korean-American fashion to the local Korean-American community. What happened next caught everyone off guard. That cramped little shop generated $700,000 in its first year. Keep in mind, the same location had burned through 6 previous owners, all of whom folded within 3 years. Do acknowledged this himself, saying that because he did not have much money, he bought a small shop that fit his budget, and the previous 6 owners had closed their business in 3 years. 3 years later, in 1987, they renamed the store Forever 21 to reach beyond the Korean-American community. Do explained that 21 represented the most enviable age, since young adults craved its independence, while older adults missed its lightness. Aspirational, universal, and sticky, it turned out to be one of the smart rebrands in retail history. What separated Forever 21 from every other cheap clothing chain was not the price tags. It was Jin Sook Chang. Business Insider described her as having a nearly clairvoyant ability to predict trends, and for decades, her personal instinct drove every product selection decision, which is an unusual thing to say about someone running a company that eventually pulled in billions. 11 stores dotted California by 1989, with their first mall-based location opening at Panorama Mall in Panorama City. Expansion beyond the state came in 1995 at the Mall of the Americas in Miami, and by around 1999, the chain counted approximately 100 locations. The 2000s brought a different gear entirely. Canada got the first international store in 2001. The same year, Forever 21 launched its large-format Forever 21 concept: bigger stores, more inventory, more foot traffic. An e-commerce site went live in 2003. a store opened in the United Arab Emirates in 2004. Acquisitions accelerated everything. Gadzooks came out of bankruptcy in 2005, about 150 stores for $33 million, and Rampage followed in 2006, 44 locations for $14 million. Revenue crossed $1 billion for the first time that year, and the men's line 21 Men launched alongside it. From there, the numbers almost stopped making sense. Revenue climbed to roughly $2.66 billion in 2010, jumped to $3.33 billion by 2011, reached $3.7 billion in 2013, and peaked at approximately $4.4 billion in 2015. Think about what that means. No outside investors, no IPO, no venture capital. A husband and wife who arrived in America with nothing grew a fashion company to $4.4 billion in annual revenue within just over 3 decades. All of it privately held. Revenue kept climbing, and so did Do-Won Chang's appetite for enormous physical stores, which is where the cracks first appeared. 38,000 square feet was the average Forever 21 footprint, nearly double the 20,000 square feet typical for an H&M. But the company didn't just build large stores, it built temples. The Las Vegas location stretched to roughly 127,000 square feet. San Bernardino hit 94,000. And the largest store the company ever operated, in Riverside, California, sprawled across 184,234 square feet, more than 3 football fields of fast fashion. And then came Times Square. On June 25, 2010, Forever 21 opened a 4-level flagship at 1540 Broadway in the Space Virgin megastore once occupied, totaling 91,257 square feet, 151 fitting rooms, 32 cash registers, 500 employees, and operating hours from 8 a.m. to 2 a.m. The chief executive officer projected more than $100 million in first-year sales from that single address. That moment signaled to the world that Forever 21 considered itself a cultural institution, not just a clothing retailer. But underneath the spectacle, a dangerous bet was being placed on one assumption: that people would keep showing up to malls. They didn't. Annual mall visits across the United States dropped from approximately 35 billion in 2009 to 17 billion by 2013, a decline of more than 50%. This retail apocalypse hit Forever 21 particularly hard, because they kept signing long-term leases on the biggest spaces in those same dying malls, even as competitors like Inditex's Zara pivoted toward smaller, more flexible footprints in urban centers. Understanding why Forever 21 collapsed means understanding how the Chang family ran it, because this was not just a family-owned business. Control was concentrated to a degree that borders on the absurd. 3 people sat on the board of directors: Do-Won Chang, daughter Linda Chang, and company president Alex Oka, who held 1% ownership. No independent directors, no outside voices, no private equity oversight. 99% of the company belonged to the Changs. Both daughters had been groomed for the operation from childhood, wielding price tag guns in warehouses and manning cash registers during summers and holidays, details that surfaced in court documents years later. Linda graduated from Wharton, spent time at Merrill Lynch as an investment banking analyst and at Pottery Barn, then joined Forever 21 in September of 2008 as marketing director. When she arrived, no marketing department existed. She built one from scratch and eventually rose to executive vice president. Esther, the younger sister, studied fiber science and fashion merchandising at Cornell, interned at Cosmo Girl magazine and Nordstrom, and came aboard in 2011, rising to vice president of merchandising. But here, family loyalty curdled into something poisonous for the business. Do-Won Chang personally approved employee expenses and interrogated executives about receipts for lunches and Uber rides, even while the company was, in the words of multiple former employees, sinking fast. The top floor of the Los Angeles headquarters earned a nickname, Mr. Chang's World, where people kept quiet outside his office. Mrs. Chang's wing operated with its own security, windows permanently covered by blinds. Former employees told the New York Times the company eagerly recruited outside experts to overhaul operations, then proceeded to ignore every recommendation those experts offered on technology, marketing, and logistics. Enormous shipments sat stagnating in warehouses because they needed the Chang's personal sign-off, and once approved, had to be shipped at expensive overnight rates to make up for lost time. International operations turned particularly chaotic. Customs agents confiscated shipments of shoes and cosmetics because nobody at the company had secured the proper import licenses. Much of that inventory ended up in dumpsters. Eric Gordon, a professor at the University of Michigan's Ross School of Business, put it bluntly. On the founder side, this hubris thing is pretty common, but it is particularly deadly if you have been successful for a long time. They did not have a board of directors to give them a reality check. They did not have equity analysts to give them a reality check. You can live in your self-created bubble for a lot longer, but then the bubble pops. Retail analyst Mark Cohen echoed the same idea with fewer words. Forever 21 has basically been a one-trick pony. The founder and his wife did remarkably well until the business got too big for them to continue to do remarkably well by themselves. While the family management issues gutted the company from within, Forever 21 fought constant battles on the outside. Design copying topped the list. More than 50 lawsuits accused the company of knocking off other designers' work, and the list of plaintiffs reads like a directory of global fashion: Gucci, Anna Sui, Diane von Furstenberg, H&M, Adidas, and Puma, among others. What stands out is that Forever 21 never once lost. Every case settled, which amounted to paying licensing fees after the fact. Susan Scafidi, a professor at Fordham University's Fashion Law Institute, described it to Women's Wear Daily in 2019. For well over a decade, Forever 21 had a reputation for copying designs and settling, which amounts to paying a licensing fee on the back end. Smaller designers bore the worst of it. Scafidi noted that Forever 21 showed a preference for copying the work of younger and less established designers, because they are less likely to be protected by a phalanx of scary litigators. One case actually reached a jury, the Trovata lawsuit, and the courtroom testimony was revealing. Co-founder Jin Sook Chang testified under oath that she did not know her own company's ownership structure or who the other executives were. Jurors deadlocked 5-1 in Trovata's favor before a mistrial was declared, and Forever 21 settled before retrial. Around the same period, in 2007, the company admitted it employed no actual designers, only what it called very savvy designer merchants, and acknowledged that it did not always know where its suppliers' design ideas originated. Labor violations painted an even uglier picture. A 2016 Department of Labor investigation uncovered that workers in Los Angeles factories producing for Forever 21 earned as little as $4 per hour against a federal minimum of $7.25 per hour. Payment often came per piece, 12 cents per vest, for example, meaning a worker needed to sew 60 vests per hour just to reach minimum wage. And this is where it gets worse. One of Forever 21's biggest suppliers, a company called One Clothing, turned out to be secretly owned by Do-Won Chang's private investment firm, Two Capital. The founder's own entity was paying workers below minimum wage in his own supply chain. Department of Labor investigators stated it plainly that since 2008, our investigators have identified dozens of manufacturers producing goods for Forever 21 under sweatshop-like conditions. Problems extended to the retail stores themselves. Between 2010 and 2015, repeat OSHA violations piled up for blocked exits and dangerous conditions. $236,500 in fines hit the Paramus, New Jersey and Times Square locations in 2014 alone, followed by $158,000 more at Wayne, New Jersey, marking the third time in 7 months the company received penalties exceeding $100,000 each. Most people never noticed it, but if you flipped over one of those bright yellow Forever 21 shopping bags and looked at the very bottom, you would find 3 small words printed in black ink: John 3:16. A Bible verse, stamped on every bag since the company's earliest days. Duwan Chang explained why during a 2012 CNN interview. He said it shows us how much God loves us. The love He gave us by giving us His only Son, Jesus, was so unbelievable to me. I hoped others would learn of God's love, so that's why I put it there. Every morning at 5 a.m., the Chang family attended church services in downtown Los Angeles. Vacations did not interest them. They went on mission trips instead, traveling to Afghanistan, India, Pakistan, and reportedly even North Korea, where Do-won personally distributed corn to villagers. Linda Chang once described her parents' approach this way: "Every decision that they made has been with thoughtful prayer. I think they get a lot of business ideas and insight during early morning prayer time." Christianity Today published a striking essay in March of 2025, right as the second bankruptcy hit. A woman named Sarah Kyunga White wrote about discovering John 3:16 on a Forever 21 bag as a troubled teenager, and how that moment became a spiritual turning point for her. But the same article carried an honest admission. "I had only to look at the skimpy tube top hanging on the rack to know it was not biblical values that were first and foremost on Forever 21's mind. Others were far less gentle." Jezebel once labeled Forever 21 a California-based creepy Christian sweatshop emporium. Reconciling a Bible verse on the shopping bags with wages of $4 an hour in the supply chain proved difficult for just about everyone who tried. Revenue slid from that $4.4 billion peak to approximately $3.4 billion by 2017, a steady decline. International markets bled roughly $10 million every month. Countries started dropping off the map: the Netherlands in January of 2018, Thailand that June, Ireland later that year. Online sales accounted for just 16% of total revenue, a dismal number compared to Zara's 27% online growth and H&M's 21% over the same period. Linda Chang herself acknowledged the scope of the miscalculation, telling Fast Company that they went from 7 countries to 47 countries within a less than 6-year timeframe, and with that came a lot of complexity. On September 29, 2019, Forever 21 filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in the U.S. Bankruptcy Court, District of Delaware, listing liabilities between $1 billion and $10 billion. $350 million in debtor-in-possession financing came through, $275 million from J.P. Morgan Chase, and $75 million from TPG 6th Street Partners. Bankruptcy was no longer a theory. None of it should have come as a surprise, except that Do-won Chang had nobody around him willing or able to deliver bad news. No outside board members, no analysts. Just a founder who still personally approved individual Uber receipts, and who operated in near total isolation. One detail captures the financial erosion better than any revenue chart. Back in January of 2015, as cash tightened, Do-won drew up loan agreements pulling $10 million from his own accounts and $5 million from each daughter's trust fund at 2% interest. When the bankruptcy filing landed, both daughters appeared as unsecured creditors. The parents had borrowed from their own children. Forbes dropped the Changs from the billionaires list in July 2019, with their combined net worth falling from $5.9 billion at its peak to approximately $1.6 billion. On February 19, 2020, a consortium of Authentic Brands Group, Simon Property Group, the largest mall real estate investment trust in the country, and Brookfield Asset Management finalized the purchase of Forever 21. The price was $81.1 million, plus the assumption of up to $53 million in unpaid merchandise obligations. The brand had been sold. That number deserves to sit with you for a moment. A brand that generated $4.4 billion in annual revenue at its height sold for $81 million. Not a single competing bid materialized. The consortium stood alone. Do-Won and Jin Sook Chang walked away with nothing, their entire ownership stake gone, their connection to the company they founded severed completely. New ownership restructured operations under a joint venture called Spark Group, short for Simon Properties Authentic Retail Concepts, and attempted to stabilize. Revenue reportedly recovered to about $2 billion by 2021, but the underlying damage ran deeper than a change at the top could fix. August 2023 brought what looked like a lifeline. Chinese ultra-fast fashion giant Shein acquired approximately one-third of Spark Group, and a co-branded Forever 21 and Shein product line was announced that October. A pop-up event at Ontario Mills Mall in California drew over 7,000 guests. On paper, the arrangement carried real promise. Delivery fell short. Authentic Brands Group Chief Executive Jamie Salter described the results as good, but not great. And by 2024, he went much further, calling the Forever 21 acquisition probably the biggest mistake he had made. Analyst Brian Gildenberg explained why the Shein partnership could not fix what was broken. He said Forever 21 thought standing next to Shein would make them relevant again. But partnerships do not matter if the core product, strategy, and execution are not there. Losses during the final fiscal year reached approximately $150 million, with cumulative losses across the previous 3 years exceeding $400 million. Debt had ballooned to $1.58 billion. Closings began on February 14, 2025, when Wave 1 of liquidation sales launched at approximately 236 locations. Wave 2 started February 27th at the remaining 118. March 3rd brought the layoffs of 700 employees and the permanent shuttering of the LA headquarters. On March 16, 2025, Forever 21 filed for Chapter 11 for the second time in 6 years, blaming Shein and Temu for exploiting the $800 de minimis duty-free import threshold, alongside declining mall traffic, inflation, and rising costs. Every one of the 354 remaining U.S. stores closed permanently by May 1, 2025. Creditor recoveries told the final story, under 3% on the $1.09 billion in ABL debt, and zero, not a fraction, zero, on $497 million in term and subordinated loans. As of early 2026, Forever 21 exists as a brand name and little else in any physical sense. Authentic Brands Group controls 100% of the intellectual property, a transfer that unsecured creditors are actively challenging in bankruptcy court. September 2025 brought an announcement from ABG about a digital-first relaunch with new United States partners, Unique Brands handling e-commerce and men's wholesale, Mark Edwards Apparel covering women's wholesale, and Kids Concepts taking on children's wear. The Forever21.com website operates again as an online-only platform. ABG has claimed it's in advanced discussions about opening new physical stores in the United States, but as of March 2026, not a single location has actually opened. International operations continue under separate licensees in various markets. But the American mall presence, the thing that defined Forever 21 for an entire generation of shoppers, no longer exists. Do-Won and Jin Sook Chang live in Beverly Hills, with a combined net worth estimated at roughly $1.6 billion, derived mostly from real estate and prior earnings rather than from Forever 21. Their faith has not wavered, and their missionary work continues. Neither they nor their daughters have spoken publicly about the second bankruptcy. Duan Chang once told an interviewer, "I came here with almost nothing, and I'll always have a grateful heart toward America for the opportunities that it's provided me." On another occasion, his words carried a different weight. "That is a reward that humbles me. The fact that immigrants coming to America, much like I did, can come into a Forever 21 and know that all of this was started by a simple Korean immigrant with a dream. That dream was genuine, and the achievement was staggering. A couple who arrived in America pulling 19-hour days, who saved $11,000 across 3 years, who opened a 900-square-foot store that 6 previous tenants could not keep alive for 3 years, turned it into a $4.4 billion company with 800 stores, 57 countries, and 43,000 employees. But the exact traits that built the empire, the hands-on control, the gut-level decisions, the refusal to delegate, the unshakable belief that they knew best, turned into the traits that tore it down. A multi-billion-dollar global company ran as though it were still that 900-square-foot shop on Figueroa Street. No independent board, no outside expertise anyone was willing to accept. A CEO approving Uber receipts while shipments decomposed in warehouses. Chang once offered what might be the most revealing line of all, "I have never once thought of myself as a billionaire. Even today, I got here on a bus." There is something genuinely admirable in that humility. But when you're responsible for 800 locations and 43,000 employees, at some point, you need to stop riding the bus and start trusting the people you hired to drive. The Forever 21 collapse isn't only about fast fashion or shifting consumer habits or the rise of Shein and Temu. Those forces mattered, but plenty of other retailers navigated the same headwinds and survived. At its core, this is a story about a family that created something extraordinary and then couldn't bring themselves to release their grip, even as it crumbled in their hands. That lesson reaches far beyond the retail industry. If you got something out of this breakdown, subscribe. We cover business stories like this every week, the strategies, the decisions, and the human dynamics behind the biggest wins and losses in the corporate world. I'll see you in the next one.